Just yesterday, Cyberpunk 2077 got yet another new update. This is a pretty interesting update because for some of you, you will literally have double the FPS in-game. It's a massive performance improvement, while some others out there may now have slightly lower FPS as a result of this update. But even beyond just the new update to the game, we have some other updates around Cyberpunk 2077 in general. We get some news on Phantom Liberty, this being fairly major, as well as a pretty interesting update on the FF06B5 mystery, with a potential character that is returning to Cyberpunk for Phantom Liberty that may come as a surprise. The latest update to Cyberpunk 2077 was for PC players only, and even only some PC players can really benefit from this one. It was a bit over 1 GB on GOG, as well as 6.6 GB on Steam. This update finally added in support for DLSS 3.0 if you do have compatible hardware. And as a part of that, we also got Nvidia Reflex support, which many more of you should be able to benefit from. There's a lot of posts online saying this update's quite literally only for 4000 series GPU owners, and that's not technically true. Nvidia Reflex does have a bit more broad support, and the performance findings from this update are actually really interesting, partly because it's not all positive. For some of you, the new DLSS 3.0 is going to be massive, if you have the right hardware. DLSS 3.0 is a bit of a confusing naming, as it really shouldn't be called that at all. It's kind of its own and different thing. DLSS 3.0 technically does a couple of different things, some of which are different than DLSS 2.0, but the big reason you're going to see a huge performance gain with DLSS 3.0 is you're going to have frame generation. And frame generation is only going to be available if you own a 4000 series Nvidia GPU, which is not many people, at least as of right now. So in Cyberpunk, there's a new separate setting to turn on with frame generation, this outside of the typical DLSS window. And with my current 4090, turning this on in Cyberpunk, my FPS almost doubled. Like literally, it was just I flipped a switch and now I get twice as many frames in Cyberpunk 2077. It literally feels like magic. If you're one of the lucky few to have a 4000 series GPU, the performance boost here is going to be absolutely incredible. I'm able to now play Cyberpunk 2077 basically maxed out at 4K resolution while almost always being above 120 FPS. This is a ridiculously good looking game, and being able to play it at this high of a frame rate does feel pretty insane. Before this update, in busy areas, I would regularly drop to about 60 FPS. Now, I'm personally seeing bonuses on my 4090, but there's other reports out there of people getting similar bonuses on the 4080 as well as the 4070 Ti. But frame generation does come with a very notable downside, at least in Cyberpunk, and that is after exiting a menu in-game, I get very intense frame drops. Like you can see here, I basically just go from the menu to back to playing the game, and all of a sudden my FPS crawls for a couple of seconds. Now, fortunately, it quite literally is just a second or two, then things will return to normal, but this happens every single time. It's not like it's sometimes when opening and closing a menu. No, every time I open a menu, this occurs. And I could definitely see how this could become very frustrating and annoying very quickly. For me, being able to play the game at nearly double FPS, and especially on a high refresh rate monitor, makes this worth it. I could tough out these frame drops from time to time, but you may value things differently, especially if you're not playing at a higher refresh rate monitor. Maybe just having the game at 60 FPS is perfectly fine and you don't want to deal with these frame drops, so turning off frame generation may be the move for you. But if you turn off frame generation, this is where things started to get a little bit bizarre in my testing. Out of curiosity, I wanted to see how performance would be impacted when leaving frame generation off. Now, hypothetically, without this setting turned on, my FPS on the old build of the game versus the new build of the game should have been almost identical. I'm using the old version of DLSS, so there really shouldn't be much of any change. Except that wasn't the case at all, and after turning off frame generation and comparing my FPS averages on the Cyberpunk 2077 benchmark on the old update versus the new one, I actually lost about 7 FPS. On the past version, I was averaging around 94.56 FPS, while in the new version, I averaged around 87.64 FPS. So now 7 FPS isn't massive, but that still is almost a 10% drop in performance, which is considerable, considering nothing was supposed to be different here. Plus, why am I losing FPS with a new update? An important note here, this is not just because I have a 4000 series GPU. This FPS loss I'm experiencing hypothetically should apply to anyone who's using DLSS, anyone who has a relatively modern Nvidia GPU, including 3000 and 2000 series. So being absolutely confused by this, I actually ran a bunch more tests, and that is why this video is a day late, and in the end, I discovered something pretty interesting. When I was using a preset, that with Ray Tracing Ultra, the latest update to the game actually gave me a nice FPS boost. I was getting more FPS when I had this preset enabled. But this Ray Tracing Ultra preset actually isn't the highest quality version of Cyberpunk 2077. After you set this preset, there's a couple of additional settings you can tweak and turn them up to Psycho mode, which will give you even higher quality things in game. And when I did this for screen space reflections as well as overall ray tracing quality, I actually got higher FPS on the old version of the game, and it was that similar 7 FPS drop. So now, I'm not entirely sure what's going on here. This could be just some kind of strangeness with the benchmark overall. There were definitely some interesting performance gaps while running the same benchmark several times in a row with the same settings. Perhaps something like SSR is broken when put on the Psycho mode on the old build of the game and now it's fixed. That's why you're getting lower FPS. Or maybe there's just something else going on. But there are other reports online of some users experiencing the exact same thing, aka worse FPS with this update depending on which settings you use. So perhaps something else in the game got tweaked. Either way, the other new component of this update is Nvidia Reflex, which if you have any GPU that is from Nvidia and is the 900 series or newer, you're able to turn this on, and you probably should. It's a new setting in the video menu, and what this is going to do is lower your latency while playing. Your inputs should hypothetically feel a bit smoother and a bit quicker, and the overall frames of the game may feel a bit smoother in general. And the initial results with this are very positive. You can see some posts online of some users getting nearly half the latency in Cyberpunk, and although this isn't as obvious a measure as FPS, it's definitely a positive improvement and again does benefit quite a few people out there. And that really is the update. Outside of that, there's no other bug fixes or changes to the game. It was literally just these new Nvidia based settings. And of course, with an update to the game, many mods will break, so those are slowly getting updated. Some are already updated, but if you are playing modded Cyberpunk and you let your game update, some things were likely broken. And the update in general is just kind of bizarre. The new frame generation feels great, but does come with a fairly major cost, and if you do want to turn this off, depending on what settings you use, you may experience slightly lower FPS. The update also just didn't include the new ray tracing overdrive mode that was also advertised. It seems like this is still coming. It doesn't seem like it's canceled, but we don't really know when or why it didn't drop right here. But at the same time, I feel like this frame generation thing, the DLSS 3.0, if you're somebody who just loves Cyberpunk, this could be a reason to upgrade your GPU. Being able to play Cyberpunk maxed out at 4K with 120 FPS just feels phenomenal. It definitely is unfortunate that only a few people out there are really able to benefit from this upgrade, but hey, if you see a GPU go on sale in the future, this could be the selling point. But even beyond that, we also got an update on Phantom Liberty, that with Growl FM winners being posted. If you're not familiar, CDPR did a contest to choose the music that will appear on the new radio station coming with Phantom Liberty. This is 89.7 Growl FM. It's going to be hosted by somebody named Ash, who is going to be voiced by Sasha Grey. And basically, as a part of this contest, you would submit a track inspired by this video, and if you're chosen, you'll appear in the game as a part of the radio station and get some other prizes. So the track list is out. The winners are out there. Unfortunately, we can't actually listen to the music, at least not yet. These tracks aren't publicly posted, but Noah on Reddit did compile a Spotify playlist of other songs that these winning artists have made, so you can kind of get a feel for their style. I'll have this playlist linked down below just under the like button if you are interested. There still isn't much known about when Phantom Liberty or even patch 1.7 is coming. I have a feeling they will actually drop together. 1.7 will be a part of the Phantom Liberty update, but at the same time, I also thought Phantom Liberty was coming early in 2023, so what do I know? But either way, a date to keep in mind is March 30th. This is going to be the next earnings call from CD Projekt Red and where we could learn more about all of this. Outside of that, Cyberpunk Edgerunners did recently win some more awards, which is definitely deserving and quite nice to see overall for that series. But we also have a pretty interesting update on the FF06B5 mystery. If you missed my last video on this, I really encourage you to watch it because there's no way I could recap all of that info right here. But in general, CDPR added some more clues to the FF06B5 mystery in Cyberpunk with the most recent update to the Witcher 3 Next Gen. Now this is a mystery that spans multiple games. And since this news has gone live, there's been all kinds of new theories put forward on Reddit, as well as other potential connections being noticed between these two games. But to me, what has been one of the most recent and interesting happenings is this new update by Carnage. Carnage is a streamer, but he was also included in Cyberpunk 2077 as the character Gary the Prophet. Gary the Prophet has a little quest associated with him. He's going to talk about all kinds of different conspiracy theories, but at the end of the quest you do for him, he ends up getting abducted in game, and we never really know what happens to him, just that people with blue eyes have taken him. And Gary is notable on a broader scale because of this ring he wears. This ring is also worn by some some of the monks that sit outside of the FF06B5 statue, as well as Mr. Parallels and Mr. Blue Eyes, making them all kind of have this mysterious and interesting connection. So now, the recent update is we see a picture of Carnage back ready to do motion capture work, and this tweet was liked by some people who work at CDPR, which to me does suggest that Gary the Prophet will likely be returning in Phantom Liberty, and maybe this means we'll get some updates on what this big mystery is, or even some connections to the Parallels questline.